Well, hey everybody, Matt here, and I've got a video that I think this was really an aha moment for me when I kind of got the hang of the workflow for this. It's basically, you're an ON1 develop, and let's say you're using ON1 from start to finish. So you're an ON1 develop, and there's settings like the vignette setting, all right, and then you go to effects, and there's settings that have vignettes, and they're named the same. They have the same presets. Is one better than the other? Where are you supposed to do it? And then even if you're using ON1 as a plugin, like maybe you're starting in Lightroom, again, Lightroom's got a vignette. Lightroom has color adjustments, and you're jumping over most likely to ON1 effects, and that's got it as well. So where do you do this stuff? And I think that's a big thing, is to figure out the workflow for this. So here's the idea. Here's how I hope that I can help you with this. Is the way to think of develop would be, I'm gonna do things like cropping. If I want to crop the photo, I'm gonna come in here to develop, and I'm gonna crop. If I'm gonna do any local adjustments, locally meaning, I think the sky is a little bit bright here, so I want to darken just the sky. I want to make the sky darker. I want to make something brighter. I want to even out the photo. I want to draw attention to something. I think those are your local adjustments. Even any big fixes, whether it's cloning or healing or the perfect eraser or whatever, any big fixes, I think, are things that we would do to the raw photo. As an example here, I'd go in here, probably increase the exposure a little bit, bring down my highlights quite a bit for that sky. Right? I press the J key and I do my whites. And then I press the J key. I just want to make sure I don't blow it out, and pressing J will show my little highlight and shadow clipping there. I'll do the same thing on the black. Of course, I'm not going to go all the way with it, but a little bit more blacks there. A little bit of structure. So my basic tone and color. I would do any color correcting here. I think it could be a little bit warmer, but I'm not going to do anything creative at this point. Okay. Keep going down the line here. You'll see we have details. So you would do any lens correction or noise reduction at this point. Get all that done on your raw photo. That's where you're going to get the best results for this stuff, is on your raw photo. Again, any lens corrections, I don't really have any to speak of for this photo, but there were lens corrections, or if you scroll up here to the top, you'll see that we also have some transform controls. So I would get that done here. So now it begs the question, there's a couple other things that I want to do. I want to work with the color a little bit. I want to add a vignette. And I want to add a glow. I think a glow will look really nice on a photo like this. I do a lot on, especially my fall photo colors, or my fall photo video or photos with a lot of color in them. Anything with a lot of color, anything with a lot of detail, the glow tends to look really good for. Maybe some color adjustment. So the problem is those settings exist here in Develop, but they also exist in Effects. So where do you do them? Well, here's the deal. You keep your develop settings. At least here's my suggested workflow. Okay, this is not a rule, but the first thing to understand is you're not going to get better or worse quality. So I'm not going to get a better vignette if I do it here in Develop than I would if I did it in Effects. Okay, so then it becomes about workflow. So from a workflow perspective, the way I would suggest to do this is to keep your basic tonal develop settings separate from your creative stylization process. And then that draws a line right in the sand, right? You know exactly where to go. If I start messing around, if I start going into effects and I start adding a vignette, and then I want to go to develop and I think, well, maybe the edges are too dark, and I start to have to go in here and mess around with exposure, and I realize, well, it's kind of really just where the vignette is. You start to have all these tasks that were done in these different places. Okay. If I start to change the color again, well, did I change the color here in Develop? Did I boost the colors, or did I just warm the color and just kind of counteract a color shift in the photo just with some temperature settings here? Again, you run into some problems on where to go to adjust these things. So by doing it this way, by having your basic settings, your basic cropping and everything done here in Develop, and then I go over to Effects. Go over to Effects and probably do a glow filter. Would look really nice here, I think. It'll add some contrast to the photo. And then I can go down here under Halo, and that'll kind of soften things out a little bit. It's kind of weird. We spend a lot of money to get really sharp photos, and a glow, you think it blurs the photo, but it doesn't. It just kind of adds a little bit of contrast, and it just adds this kind of soft feeling to it, but the details are still there. The details that, we paid a lot of money for a lens or a tripod for, they stay. So I found I add a lot of glows to my photos, especially photos like this. I'd probably go in here and put a vignette on top of it, the old big softy. That's probably too vignette-y, but go in here and just pull that darkness back a little bit. So I'd go in there and I'd add a vignette to the photo as well. So now I'm starting to do my creative adjustments here. And what I've done is I've basically separated my basic tonal developments and my basic cropping and things like that from my stylization and my creative process. If I wanted to boost the colors in here, I'd go to add filter and I'd probably go to color enhancer. And one of the things you'll see in color enhancers, it almost looks like the tone and color, right? I've got temperature, I've got tint, I've got saturation, I've got all these same settings inside of here. So you're like, well, where do I do it? Again, if this is a creative adjustment, I'm probably going to do it here, because then I've got more tools at my disposal. Number one, a lot of people don't know this, but by being in effects, you've got a lot more masking tools at your disposal. All right, so that's instantly a reason to do this. Is if you think you're going to need to mask it, you've got a lot more masking tools at your disposal here. The other thing that starts to happen is, I can look at the effect, the creative stylization, and I can reduce the opacity of it, or I can reduce the opacity of any one of those layers. Again, that's something I really can't do in Develop. So if I looked at the photo and I thought, hey, you know what, I went a little bit overboard here, I'd really have to start digging down through each panel to figure out what I did and then start to pull it back from there. But because I did this in effects, I have an opacity slider and I can say, hey, you know what, hold up on my creative process here. I maybe went too far. Maybe I want to add to it. Okay. You get blend modes that get associated with every one of these layers. So you do get more options with it too. But I think the main thing to understand is that it's not better. This isn't a better vignette. This isn't a better glow because I did it in Develop or Effects, because in Develop we think we're working on the raw photo, because it actually, between Develop and Effects, if you're a full ON1 user starting in Develop and using Effects, everything's non-destructive. All right, you can just hit the reset button and you can go back to scratch. So you're never really rendering out a JPEG or anything like that. Now, if you're starting in a program like Lightroom, that's a little bit different. Lightroom also has a vignette. Lightroom has, split toning and hue and saturation and color controls and all those things. So if you're using ON1 Effects as a plugin, what do you do from there? Well, my suggestion would be, I usually like to get as much done as I can in Lightroom. It is a stopping process to leave Lightroom. It stops your workflow to go to a whole nother program. There's a lot of setup and teardown that has to happen to switch brands, basically, to go to another program. So in ON1, when I'm in the develop mode, it doesn't stop me. Like if I decide, hey, you know what, I want to add an effect and a glow, I click on effects and then literally in half a second, I'm there. I don't have to wait for anything to happen. So it feels like a very cohesive workflow. Where in Lightroom, it actually, it does kind of stop you a little bit. So I would say, you know what, if I'm in Lightroom and I don't have a very, very special effect that I have to do in ON1 Effects, then I'm probably going to do my vignette right over here. If I wanted to boost the reds in the photo, I'm probably going to go to HSL and go to the saturation and boost the reds in the photo here. Now, if I get a little bit more creative with a glow and maybe a texture or a border and some more things like that, at that point, then I would make the jump over to ON1. And in fact, at that point, I would probably, since I'm already going to be there, and this is why every photo is going to be different. It's hard to give you like, this is the workflow forever. It's because if I think I'm going to be there, then I'll probably hold off on the vignette here too. And I'll do that over in effects if I realize I'm going to end up there anyway. Okay. So hopefully that, again, this was an aha moment for me. And I hope it was you, in that it's very helpful to have a separation, because it can be confusing. You can go through here in effects and you can see like the tone enhancer, and this has got shadows and highlights, and you're thinking, am I supposed to do this here? If you go through here, there's sharpening controls, do your sharpening on your raw photo in whatever raw editor you're using. So if you're doing it in Develop, get your sharpening done there. There's no better sharpening here, no better noise reduction here. But when it comes to your stylization and your creative effects, I think if you can separate that part out, I think you can definitely help yourself. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Hope it helps out like it did for me. Thanks again. Talk to you again real soon.